That night, the sky roared as if it wanted to crush the entire world. The raging flood devoured the tattered slum, dragging with it a chilling secret that drifted right before Malik's eyes. The 18-year-old boy, with sinewy hands covered in scars from years of scavenging through trash and a heart burning with an unquenchable fire, had no idea that this night would seal his fate. It wasn't just about pulling a life back from the clutches of death. Malik had unknowingly torn away the veil hiding the true identity of that stranger. A mysterious, powerful figure who would turn the world as he knew it upside down, forever. Everything began when Malik heard a strange sound. Not the rain, not the wind, but a human voice, crying for help, faint like a candle on the verge of going out. He rushed outside, ignoring his mother's desperate screams to stop him. Under the flickering lightning, he saw it, a luxury car floating aimlessly in the murky floodwaters. Clinging desperately to the shattered window was an old man with white hair, his panicked eyes locking onto Malik as if he were his last hope.
Nostus, no rainquat.
Only tattered pants and the strength of someone with nothing left to lose. Malik dove into the flood. The icy water sliced into his skin, the waves tossing him further away, but he kept swimming, kept fighting, until he finally dragged the old man to shore. That old man was Arthur Crane, a reclusive millionaire known throughout the city for his vast fortune and frozen heart. When rescued, he said nothing. He only held Malik's hand tightly, his reddened eyes staring at the boy for a long moment before the rescue team took him away. Malik returned home, drenched and shivering, giving no thought to what he had just done. To him, it was nothing more than a crazy night that would soon be forgotten. But 3 days later, a sleek black limousine pulled up in front of the slum, drawing the curious eyes of dozens of onlookers. Arthur Crane stepped out, not the frail old man from the flood, but a man with a resolute gaze. He called for Malik, his voice thick with emotion. "Boy, I have lived for 70 years, earned millions of dollars, but I have never met anyone willing to risk their life for a stranger like you. I have no family, no one to trust, until that night." Before everyone, he announced that he would legally adopt Malik and leave his entire fortune to him after his passing. But the biggest surprise came that very moment. He wrote a check for $500,000, handed it to Malik's mother, and said, "You raised a hero. This is so you will never have to cry from hunger again." Malik's mother collapsed to her knees, tears falling onto the dry earth she once believed would bury her children's dreams. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into cheers and applause. Malik stood frozen, unable to believe his own eyes. Yet, in his heart, the most precious thing wasn't the money, but the look of pride in his mother's eyes, a look he had never seen in all his 18 years of poverty. After that fateful day, it seemed as if Malik's life had turned to a new, dazzling chapter. From a slum boy who scavenged through trash, he now lived in Arthur Crane's grand mansion, dining on hot meals and wearing brand new shoes without holes. His mother, Rosa, no longer wept from hunger at night. His 2 younger siblings were sent to good schools. But that newfound radiance was soon overshadowed by darkness Malik had never imagined. Just 2 weeks after Arthur announced Malik as his adopted son, a stranger appeared at the gates of the mansion. Dressed in a black suit, with eyes as sharp as blades, he introduced himself as Vincent Crane, Arthur's distant nephew, the only family member Arthur had ever disowned due to his involvement in shady dealings. Vincent wasn't there to offer congratulations. In front of Malik, he sneered, his voice laced with menace. "You think you can steal my inheritance just because of one lucky night in the flood? I'll make sure both you and that old man regret this." The very next day, a lawsuit erupted. Vincent accused Arthur of being mentally unfit, claiming the adoption was invalid, and demanded the entire fortune be returned to him. Malik was stunned. He had barely begun to embrace happiness before being thrown into a storm of legal battles. Arthur, despite his frail health, stood firm in defending him. On a stormy evening, Arthur called Malik into his study and handed him an old wooden box. "If I don't make it through this," he whispered, "open it. This is the only thing that can save you." Before Malik could ask anything, Arthur collapsed from a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. At the same time, Vincent's attacks didn't stop at legal battles. One night, as Malik slept, he was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. 3 masked men stormed into the mansion, dragged him out of bed, and pressed a knife to his throat. "Drop the case, or your mother and siblings won't live to see another day," one of them growled. Malik struggled, but the fear for his family rendered him helpless. Just then, police sirens blared. Rosa, having grown suspicious of the previous threats, had secretly alerted the authorities. Vincent was arrested, and it seemed like everything was finally over. A few days later, Arthur passed away in the hospital, leaving Malik alone amidst a fortune and an unresolved lawsuit. It was then that he remembered the wooden box. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was a handwritten will from 10 years ago, in which Arthur declared he had severed ties with his entire family due to Vincent's betrayal. Alongside it was a letter. I have always searched for someone worthy to inherit everything. If you are reading this, use it to do something good. Accompanying the letter were documents exposing Vincent's illegal dealings, enough to overturn the case. Malik presented the evidence in court. Vincent was convicted and lost all rights to the inheritance. But the real climax came after the trial when Malik stood before the crowd and declared, "I will not keep this fortune for myself. I will use it to build schools, hospitals, and homes for people like my mother once was." Thunderous applause erupted. But in the shadows, an unknown figure watched Malik with an enigmatic gaze, murmuring under his breath, "You don't know everything yet. Arthur's true secret still lies beneath that mansion." After the trial, Malik thought his life would finally be peaceful. Vincent, his greatest enemy, had been sentenced to prison, and the entire fortune of the late millionaire Arthur Crane now belonged to him. With that money, he set out to fulfill his promise, building schools, hospitals, and new homes for the slums where he had once struggled in poverty. Everything seemed to be going in the right direction, but an unsettling feeling lingered in Malik's heart. On the day the trial ended, he couldn't shake the memory of a strange man standing silently in the crowd, staring at him as if he knew something Malik had yet to uncover. Everything changed on a stormy night, reminiscent of the fateful evening when Malik had saved Arthur from the flood. Sitting in the vast study of the mansion, he sifted through Arthur's old documents, searching for inspiration for his projects. Suddenly, a small, worn leather notebook slipped out from the pile. Inside, Arthur's shaky handwriting read, "The wine cellar holds more than just wine. Keep it secret, unless you are worthy." A chill ran down Malik's spine. He recalled the wine cellar beneath the mansion, an area Arthur had strictly forbidden him from entering, dismissing it as a pile of useless junk. Driven by curiosity and a growing sense of dread, Malik grabbed a flashlight and descended the dark staircase leading to the cellar. The air was damp, filled with the scent of dust and aging barrels. But what caught his attention was a peculiar crack in the stone wall at the far end of the room. Pressing against it, he heard a soft click. The wall shifted, revealing a hidden chamber. What lay before him made his heart stop. Dozens of old photographs, thick stacks of documents, and a locked iron chest sat before him. Malik picked up a photograph. Arthur, young and smiling, beside a beautiful black woman holding a baby in her arms. On the table, a birth certificate bore a name that shook him to his core, Malik Crane. The birth date matched his own. Before he could process what he was seeing, a figure lunged at him from the shadows. An elderly woman, her white hair in disarray, her eyes burning with fury, screamed, "You're not supposed to be here!" She swung a knife at him. Malik dodged just in time, his voice shaking. "Who are you? Why are you here?" The woman froze, the knife slipping from her hands as she burst into tears. "I am Clara, your mother," she sobbed. Malik stood frozen, his mind blank. Through broken breaths, Clara revealed a painful truth. She had once been Arthur's lover, but his family had fiercely opposed their relationship because she was poor and of a different race. When she became pregnant with Malik, Arthur had been forced to leave her. To protect Malik from his powerful and ruthless family, he had sent him to the slums, entrusting Rosa, Clara's closest friend, to raise him as her own. Before Malik could fully grasp the revelation, Clara pointed to the iron chest, her voice trembling. "Inside lies the secret Arthur hid his entire life, the truth about Vincent's father's death. If it comes out, you will lose everything." Before Malik could react, police sirens blared outside the mansion. Vincent, having escaped from prison, had tipped off the authorities for revenge. Moments later, he burst into the cellar, gun in hand, his face twisted with rage. "Give me the chest, or I'll kill your entire family," he roared. Malik was faced with an impossible choice. Handing over the chest would ensure his family's safety, but it would also erase everything he had worked for. In the tense silence, Malik made his decision. "You want the truth? Here," he shouted, flinging the documents onto the floor while simultaneously pressing a hidden alarm button Arthur had once installed. Within seconds, police officers stormed in, overpowering Vincent before he could pull the trigger. But the cost of the truth was steep. When the murder secret was exposed, Arthur's entire fortune was seized by the state. Malik and his family returned to the crumbling shack they once called home, left with nothing but empty hands. Yet, the story did not end in despair. The people of the slums, the children who had studied in the schools Malik built, gathered together, pooling whatever little they had, bringing food and hope to help Malik's family survive. Everything began when Clara suddenly disappeared. That night, as Malik returned to the small house he had just rented as a temporary refuge for himself and his mother, he found the door broken open. In the living room, a hastily written note was pinned to the wall with a dagger. If you want to see your mother again, come to the Crane estate. Alone. V. Malik's heart clenched. Vincent had escaped. Without wasting a second, he rushed to the abandoned Crane mansion, the place where Arthur had grown up before building his empire. The decaying estate loomed like a specter in the night. Inside the ruined mansion, flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the mold-covered walls. The wooden floor creaked under his every step, amplifying the cold silence around him. Malik entered the grand hall, where Vincent was already waiting. In a darkened corner, Clara sat bound to an old chair, her mouth gagged. She was pale, but her eyes still burned with defiance. The main door creaked open, as if it had been expecting him. Malik stepped inside, the icy air wrapping around him like an omen. From the staircase, Vincent's slow, deliberate voice rang out. "You came faster than I expected, kid." Malik clenched his fists and looked up toward the second floor. Vincent stood there, his grip tightening around Clara's tangled silver hair as he dragged her toward the balcony. She struggled, her terror evident, but the ropes binding her kept her powerless. "Let my mother go, Vincent. This is between you and me," Malik shouted. Vincent scoffed, pulling Clara even closer, whispering something into her ear that made her eyes widen in shock, tears spilling down her face. He then turned to Malik, his voice laced with menace. "You think this is just about Arthur making one mistake in his youth? No, kid. I'm about to show you the real truth about the Crane family." Vincent pulled an old photograph from his pocket and tossed it onto the floor. Malik bent down, picking it up. It was a yellowed picture, Arthur in his youth, standing next to another man whose face looked eerily familiar. Malik's breath caught in his throat. It was Vincent's father. Vincent let out a bitter laugh. "Arthur didn't just kill my father. He stole everything from my family." His voice dripped with resentment. "My father was the co-founder of Crane Industries, but Arthur betrayed him, framed him, and had him eliminated. My mother lost her mind from grief, and I grew up with only one purpose, to take back what's rightfully mine." Malik gripped the photo tightly, his heartbeat hammering in his chest. He could feel the depth of Vincent's hatred, the years of pain carved into every word. But he also knew that vengeance only prolonged suffering. "I am not Arthur. I am not a Crane. And I will not let your blood-stained legacy poison my life." Vincent's expression darkened. He yanked Clara closer, dragging her to the edge of the balcony. Malik lunged forward, but the sharp click of a gun being cocked froze him in place. "Step back, or I drop her." A suffocating silence filled the air. Malik shut his eyes, thinking fast. If he attacked, Clara might fall. If he hesitated, Vincent could pull the trigger. Then, a faint crack. The splintering of wood beneath Vincent's feet. His eyes widened as the weakened balcony groaned under his weight. He cursed, scrambling for the railing just as the floor gave way beneath him. Vincent roared, trying to pull himself up, but then a gunshot rang out, sharp and deafening. Clara had seized Vincent's backup gun and fired. He staggered, shock and bitterness flickering in his eyes before he collapsed. "You really are a damn fool, Malik," he whispered one last time before losing consciousness. The police arrived moments later. This time, Vincent had no chance of escaping. The dark truths of the Crane family were finally exposed, but Malik refused to let them define him. He walked away from every last cent tied to Crane Industries, determined to build a new life with his own hands. For the first time in decades, Clara no longer had to live in hiding. Malik held her close, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. The cycle of vengeance had ended. He had lost a fortune, but he had regained something far more valuable, his family, and a future free from Arthur Crane's shadow.